Welcome to Vintage SF. I'm Richard Rempel. Today I'm going to be joined by Autun Purser. He is an illustrator who's perhaps best known for his work on the best of SF Masterworks. So, first off, I'd like to know how to say your name.
Yeah, well, you were actually saying it right when you said Autun, or however you pronounced it was pretty accurate.
Autun.
It's a town in France, but I actually say Autun. That's what I normally say, because that's the
Autun.
autumn. People call me Autumn. I just accept it after a while, just whatever. But yeah, Autumn is what I say.
All right. Well, you know what? It's really nice to meet you. And yes, this must be the furthest away person I've ever talked to online. I'm in Manitoba, so we're towards the Hudson's Bay in the north. I know that you've traveled to the North Pole, and you are in Antarctica.
Yeah,
you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, right now we're in the Weddell Sea, which is the bit of Antarctica that England looks after, really. Germany and England sort of look after the peninsula of Antarctica, which is south of South America, whereas America, you tend to concentrate on the Ross Sea and the other side. And so all of the different countries look after different bits for their icebreakers, and we are here in the Weddell Sea, which is thick ice. Do you see that okay?
I do. That's good. And I see you're moving.
Yeah, we're moving, exactly. So we've just done an ice station where people measure how the ice is changing over time, the biology in the ice, to see how Antarctica might be faring in these global changing times. So we all do that in different areas, and we do it here. The German ship comes here, and there's an English ship about 400 kilometers away also doing a similar thing right now. And I'm here for 3 months so on this ship. So it's plenty of time to illustrate books.
Once again, to me, it's unbelievable that we're talking halfway around the world here, our planet. One of the things that I find interesting too is I believe it's summer out there, isn't it?
Yes, so it's the summer now, so it's breaking up a little bit. So that's good for us, because one of the things we do is we put lines of equipment down onto the seafloor with 3 or 4 kilometers of cable, and to get that equipment in we need the ice to be breakable. Even though we've got a strong icebreaker, the Weddell Sea is very thick ice often, so we wait for the summer and then we come here. And the other time in the rest of the year we're in the north, so we go the opposite way to this. So the ice has been quite good for us this year. We've had a few things we couldn't get to. The ice was too thick. We could always make it, but it would take so much time we'd miss out on other things. So we've abandoned a few things, but we got a lot done.
Would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? I know that you are a deep sea ecologist, but you're a photographer specifically, and you're also an illustrator, which we will talk about soon.
So I've always done sketching, and I always loved science fiction, and I think that the deep sea seafloor is a really unusual environment, very unexplored, and I'm running one of the deepest cameras. It goes 6,000 meters down, and we smash the ice and tow the camera on the seafloor, and I'm often seeing new places no one's ever seen before, and new ecosystems that no one's ever seen before. Like right now we're studying these ice fish that make these nests on the seafloor that we discovered 2 years ago with this ship. And we're studying how that might change when ice changes in the future. So I go and explore new areas, and my job is to survey new areas and also report on places of interest. For example, somewhere that might be mining, or after there's been an accident, like in the Gulf of, in the States where the oil rig leaked. We go and look and see how the damage was done. Sort of things like that we do. And that's my sort of day job. But at the same time, I do read science fiction all the time when I'm here, and I do my illustrations here too. So, I mean, you might remember, some of your viewers may know the magazine Journey Planet. This is I drew this. This is one of the latest covers for this fanzine, Journey Planet, sci-fi fanzine. It quite often gets Hugo nominated. And I did this on my last expedition. This is one of our helicopter pilots, and this is my PhD student. So they're on the science fiction magazine cover, but they aren't science fiction fans particularly. But yes, I did that on board this ship.
Well, one of the reasons I first learned of you is I was taking a look at the SF Masterworks, and there is, I called it a sub-series, or a way of reprinting what they call the best of SF Masterworks. And what I loved, you do all the cover art for them. So there's a continuity there in terms of the art on the cover. And I really noticed that you were looking at the plot or reading the books themselves with the images that you were creating. You want to tell us a little bit about how you got that gig?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had the idea maybe in 2012 to do a mock travel poster advertising a location from fiction. I think I did Lankhmar first. So Lankhmar is such a fun city, and I drew a poster for Lankhmar. So visit Lankhmar. It's and all about this. And I did these little jokes that they have on the travel posters we had in England in the 1950s. Visit Lankhmar, and then there'd be a little joke. Or like I did one for Arrakis for June, of course. So the joke was bring a water bottle, and so that's what they used to have. They used to have a pretty crappy joke on these travel posters. Visit Skegness, it's so bracing, and that means that Skegness is a town in England where it's always windy. So when they say it's so bracing, they mean it's bloody windy. So I tried to do the same with ideas from science fiction books. And I did it. They also had a great thing there. Similar destinations include, like if you like windy beaches, here are some other windy beaches. So if you like desert planets, here are other desert planets. So, and I did in the posters, I put the names of the planets or locations, not the names of the books. I mentioned the authors sometimes, but you'd have to work a little bit.
Hey, tell me, how are we connecting? Are you connecting by satellite?
We have the Elon Musk satellite, and we also have another satellite communications system. So we have two, and but that's new, as you mentioned. If we tried to do this 2 years ago, it would be impossible. I could only send 156K email every 15 minutes, but now we're looking at a whole different world, which is fantastic for us. We can send big video data directly to experts. Like I've been talking to experts in Australia and New Zealand and America about some of the things we found here live from the ship, which is fantastic. So you can really get things rolling before having to wait to get to shore. Really fantastic.
And I saw some pictures. You sent a link to the voyage of the Polarstern. I'm going to put some of those pictures up later when I edit this video.
Yeah.
I'm also going to show pictures from your website too, in terms of the illustrations you're talking about.
Help yourself to anything, and I can also send you some links. Yeah.
And one of the pictures I saw, you have, I believe, 93 people on the ship.
Yeah, it's actually 98 at the moment. So we have 100, or maybe it's 93. We have up to 50 crew and up to 50 scientists. That's the normal running. But in the COVID period, when people got stuck at the Antarctic base, we had 128 people on this ship, which is the most we can have. We can have 3 people in a cabin, which is, I think, 4 meters square. We have a bunk bed, and then someone's on the sofa. We had to do that with COVID because we couldn't fly the people. Some stations people fly in, but they couldn't because the airports in South Africa were shut. So that's how many we have on here. Yeah, it's a bit like a starship, really. We have the same things. We've got the ship's doctor. We have all of these things. So it's much like that. And the similar things that you face in science fiction, you're stuck together. You have to deal with each other. If you've got strong personalities, it can be like that. But it's fun.
You are very far away from civilization, really, here.
Yeah, exactly. Farthest point on the planet. We have 2 helicopters, but they can only go a couple of 100 kilometers. So we can't reach anywhere from here. So we have a surgery on board, and we actually have communications to several hospitals that they can tell our surgeon what to do if they have to do a strange operation. So we've got the connectivity is really great for that too. So yeah, we really are. There's nobody near us. I think the nearest thing is probably the UK ship, which is 400 kilometers away now. That's probably the nearest thing to us at the moment.
So that isolation is that you might feel in space. Also, you just have a couple inches of hull between you and freezing water, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a double-hulled ship, but right now the environment's pretty cold outside. It's minus 23 in the wind outside at the moment, and the sea temperature's minus 3, so it's pretty cold. And but you feel very safe on the ship. It's been sailing since 1982, and it's not had any problems so far, so I think it's okay for a while. It's getting very old. They have to basically build all the spare parts again because all the companies are out of business, the ones that made the various parts. So there's a lot more crew needed than a modern vessel. So when you go downstairs, it's like a steampunk engine room. There's like big things boiling, and there's hot pipes. And you go in one of the modern research vessels, and it's all like a computer server room. It's very different looking.
So you're a balmy minus 23 Celsius here for summer. That's my winter. Last week it was minus 20 to minus 30 here in Manitoba.
Yeah, you'd be good for this then. You should get a job on here. We actually have a library too. We have a library with science fiction. Most of it's in German, but we have these libraries that folds out, and there are things in there. So it's that was a big thing in the past. People would read for recreation, but now we've got the internet, so people are watching Netflix. The new season of Severance, you can watch it even though you're at the South Pole, for example. So
That's an awesome series too.
yeah, I got to wait till I get home, or my wife will kill me. So I'm not watching it yet. But I think some people are.
By the way, where is home for you? Because I know this company is based in Germany.
Yeah, so I actually live in Germany. I live in North Germany. I live in Bremen at the moment, but most of the time I grew up in London, and I got into science fiction in London. I was a big user of the Fantasy Centre bookshop on Holloway Road, which was a famous one in London for secondhand books, and you could go in there, and there was the three guys that were working in there. If you were very lucky, they might offer you a cup of tea after you know them for 7 or 8 years maybe, and only buy the books that they approve of. And if you didn't buy a book they approved of, they'd let you know very readily that they didn't approve of it. So they were big fans of Philip K. Dick and things like that, stuff from the 60s, 70s, this sort of counterculture stuff they loved. They were not a fan of the modern development of TV spin-offs and the like. They were not keen on this sort of fiction in there. But that's how I got into the vintage science fiction, like what you show on your channel. It's like I love all that stuff from those guys, and they were happy to talk about it and to inform everybody. And when they shut down in the early 2000s, it was a big shame. But they said in London it was impossible to keep such a shop open, and they would have basically they were doing it for free, basically. But rents were going up and up, and unfortunately it had to shut. But it's the same story everywhere, I think.
Sometimes I like to ask what your science fiction origin story is. How did you fall in love with the genre, and who are some of your favorite authors?
Yeah, that's a good question. My favorite authors now are usually things, I really like stories about the really alien. So I like Stanislav Lem and things like that. I really like these sort of stories, but I'm not exclusively into that. I tend to be more science fiction and fantasy, but I do like things like Mr. Norris and Jonathan Strange. So I do like fantasy when it's like fixed in a world that's very convincing. I like that too. But my origins, I guess I remember reading Lord of the Rings when I was about 12. When I was ill from school, and I remember reading the whole first book in just a few days. That was one. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like Quatermass at a very early age. The BBC show Quatermass about this scientist, which I'm actually doing now myself. So a scientist that was doing investigations. Yeah, and then so I like a lot of Russian science fiction, and I read hugely everything. So I like to have a surprise too. So I like the fact that when you take a new lot on, like the Russian stuff I didn't know about when I was younger, I've really enjoyed reading that. The Strugatsky brother books, I really love these books, and the Masterworks in general have been a great opportunity to try different things and illustrating them too. So I see you've got Sarah Canary behind you. I hadn't read that one until they asked me about it. They sent me a list of books, and I always want to read the book before I illustrate it. Some are fine, like Gateway. Gateway is one of my favorite books. I mean, I've read it I don't know how many times. So Gateway was a joy to do. I love that book. But some, like Sarah Canary, I'd never read, and I really liked it because I didn't know what was coming, because she's not really a genre writer, and I really like that, and I really like the way that she didn't reveal what the special about the character or anything like that. You had to piece it together a little bit. I really like that too. And I like doing that whole range, and it's been great with some of the authors that are still alive, like Karen Joy Fowler and William Gibson for the Neuromancer one. They were very hands-on and involved in deciding things. Like with the Karen Joy Fowler one with Sarah Canary, I don't know about in America, but definitely in England, they've often drawn her in the wrong dress. It's always like a black period dress, but that's not the point of the book. That's literally one of the major points, right from the start, that she's dressed in what seems like a 1970s business suit or something, not a Wild West suit, but it's a Wild West story. And they've done the wrong cover the whole time. That drove me up the wall. And but they actually asked the author what she thought of this new version, and she said, "Do this new version," because they wanted to swap. They were thinking they should swap the colors because it so often had been the black bustle dress for Sarah Canary. So that was fun. And William Gibson was very hands-on too. I did this nice futuristic car, and he said, "There's no cars in the book, take it out." And he was very professional about the wording on the signs, like it's in one of these Asian cities it's set. And I actually asked a colleague from that country to check, to write down what I wanted in the words. So I'd actually got that all checked, and we sent all that to William Gibson. So I was really impressed that he was so keen to get it right. And for that one, when I took the car away, I put a self-portrait of myself on the cover, because that was a big book for me when I was growing up. When Neuromancer came out, I read that and I loved it. But I read it in a small, tiny village in Lincolnshire, which was not like a Neuromancer town at all. But I remember loving that book, and now I've put myself on the cover, which is maybe a bit embarrassing, but I was paid to do it, so I'll do it.
Nice. Well, we'll certainly be showing that on the screen here. And
Yeah.
one that I think we just mentioned in the emails, I think one that you're really proud of, or that I think you did a great job on, was the Strugatsky Brothers Roadside Picnic.
Oh, yeah. That. I mean, to do that, I think when I got this, that was the second set of books Gollancz asked me for, and when I got the list and opened it, I shouted yes from upstairs, and my wife called, "What's up? What's up?" Like, it was because I got to do that one. I mean, it really is my favorite book. I love the audio book of that too. I listen to it very often. I read the book almost every year. I love that book, and I wanted to make it perfect. So I got I went to I sketched the digger from an East German digger. I tried to make everything just like the scene in the book when they find the golden sphere. That's another thing I like to do. So in Stalker, the film version, there is no golden sphere. And in other things I've drawn in these travel poster ranges, like the Lord of the Rings one I did, the Barrow Downs, I tried to do things that are only in the book or refer to the book rather than the TV version. So no one had done the Barrow Downs then. So I did the Barrow Downs to Lord of the Rings. And for the Roadside Picnic, I actually put the digger there because I don't think anyone's ever drawn this digger with the gold sphere in. So I really kept it like that. And I tried to draw the two people, how I imagined them crawling towards the end there. So it's been a real joy to draw most of these, especially for the ones that I really loved. So, yeah.
I think some sort of a shiny foil almost on the cover that really makes that orb pop too. It's hard to show even on screen what that looks like.
Yeah, so I didn't actually get a choice about that. They started doing it. They did the first 4 books without the foil, and then they put it on, and they've done it for all the other ones. And I think they've done it really good. I think they've chosen it really good. We kept the circular motif, like on Sarah Canary, the circle of the sun, and they've tended to put the shine on that and on various other bits. But I think they've done it really well. Like the Rendezvous with Rama one, they've put it on the lights, the 3 lights that are going down the Rama cylinder. They've done it pretty good, and they put it on the electricity that's coming off. So I'm really pleased with how that looks, actually. So
I even get a sense sometimes of your deep sea drawing, even in some of these science fiction pieces too, in terms of you have a style, but I think that you bring in some of the lines, the textures that you do of some of the deep sea drawings.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. So I do have in my hand camera, I have a microscope setting, which I do for textures, and I do definitely take the textures from images and try to do everything from life. So everything I try to do from life. So the mountains on the Sarah Canary one are the real mountains from the real location. The boat is the same. So I take a photograph from that and work from that, and the real models in the picture, real people I sketched. So I really try to keep it as accurate as that. And for the lines, I take it sort of, I do it's like the figures I do in some of my papers, and basically 2 or 3 line thicknesses and a limited color palette. So all of the colors I use for these books are the base internet colors, which is 120 colors, which was decided when I decided these things in internet land. And I try to use those colors pretty much exclusively, but with occasional exceptions. I'll add another color if I really need to, but I try to keep it like that. So so I try to draw from life where I can, and marine creatures and things like that. Yeah, definitely. If I get a chance to put those in, I will do. Yeah, on one of the travel posters, for example, there was Mission of Gravity by Hal Clement. I basically took from a deep-sea polychaete, I think. There's a silhouette in my poster of this creature in the water, and that's taken from a real creature that lives on the seafloor.
So you use a lot of photographic, what do they call it, modeling, or... so not a template, but you use them. Do you put them together, say like in Photoshop a little bit, and then you work on an illustration from that?
Yes, so I draw everything from life by hand with a pen, and I scan everything as a 600 dpi 2-color TIFF, and then I do them as different layers. So so for this one, for example, we have the city from We on the right, and I put transparency in there, so I can make the city transparent, like in the book. People, it has to be transparent. They want to see what everybody's doing, so I can add that as a transparency layer in Photoshop. But I draw them all by hand. I don't use any mice or digital on the screen, but I limit the color palette I think that goes along with the travel poster idea I used originally, because those travel advertising posters, they had a limited palette of 70 colors they could use for those original ones. I mean, I took the 120 internet colors because I wanted it to be seen the same on all the screens, but I did keep that design idea going. And so I've got a normal analog light box, a big white box, and I'll draw the different layers. So I'll draw the woman at the front, and then I'll draw a layer for the landscape, and I can overlay them physically on paper and scan them as separate layers, and then color them as separate layers. So it's a bit complicated, but I like doing it. So
I think it almost gives a texture then. I mean, it's not 3D, but there's a texture to your pictures that way.
I think so. What you say about 3D, I'm drawing Olaf Stapledon's Star Maker in 3D by hand using this technique. So I'm actually doing the layers and separating the red and the blue in the layers. So it is 3D. I'm doing an illustration for every single page from Star Maker. This is the one I take with me everywhere. That's why it's in a knackered. I've been working on this for a few years. And that's actually in 3D, but hand-drawn 3D and hand-separated in Photoshop. Yeah, but I have got a long way to go still.
Did you say every single page?
Every single page. I've highlighted a sentence from every page, and sometimes they are sentences that are highlighted by a colleague or something like that. So I've got a colleague from NASA, for example, Dr. Hand from NASA. He's involved in the Europa missions, and he's gone through the book and he's selected some of the sentences. So we're going to do an annotated Star Maker where we refer to things from the book and what goes on in real science that are similar to in the book. So that's another favorite of mine is Star Maker. But so that's one of the things I'm working on too.
Let's go on a rabbit trail here. You said Europa. Isn't that the moon, which is a water moon or a liquid moon of some sort?
It's like this, yeah, with the ice, but instead of 8 meters thick, the ice is maybe 2 or 3 kilometers thick. And yeah, so I'm actually involved in several of these projects with the guys from NASA and also the German space agency, the Deutsche Luft- und Raumfahrt. And because we come here every year, we test some of the robotics and the ideas here. Some of the things are the same, like we want to get as much power as we can from our power supply, and some things are different. Like here, I have lots of pressure, there you have no pressure. So some things are very similar, some things are very different, but there really is analogs and a lot of work between. Navigation is very similar. I mean, down here at the poles, I don't know if people know, but you can't really use compasses so well, not when you're trying to find a hole in the ice. So you're using these SLAM algorithms that drone people use. So we test the algorithms designed by much younger people than me here in the ice here, and that is intended for use in space at some point.
Wow. So you're talking about you're working with people from NASA to talk about a potential mission to Europa and what kind of equipment you'd have to use to get through that ice?
Yeah, we definitely more to do. My side of it is more what we do when we get through the ice, how we do our science with low power and how to navigation under there, and that's the sort of thing I look at. And storing the information in very low amount of data so it can be transmitted back is much the same as what we want to do. If we're going to transmit it up a wire, it has to be low, so we're still trying to compress the data but still make it useful. Maybe you do the analysis on the chip down underwater and send some outputs back. All of these things which we're testing out. And the base, we were here 2 months ago. We were at the Neumeier station, the German station, and there they've had work with growing food in space conditions. They've been doing that there, where it's constantly dark half the time, things like that. So there's a lot of analogs that go along with an interest in science fiction in this business too. Yeah,
we truly live in a science fiction world. When I think about growing up and some of the things I was imagining and reading and watching, and now, wow, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Several things have really made a big difference, I think. Lithium has been a huge, lithium batteries mean we can do so much more. That's really made a big difference in underwater imagery. And I could put a camera down with a moderately sized battery and it can take 4 photographs a day for 3 years. So including lighting, putting lighting on, like taking a flash photograph, that was unthinkable a few years ago. So these spin-offs from the electromotive industry are actually having useful scientific output as well, I think. So yeah, and a lot of people have been interested in science fiction who end up in this sort of thing. They want to design the things for this. So I think I think the two have always been tied together. Technical development. I mean, was it Clark talking about satellites and stuff like that? And then we get them, of course. And and Musk's colonization of Mars, or I like to think Kim Stanley Robinson's ideas about colonizing of Mars. I think Kim Stanley Robinson is still hugely prescient and thought about by the people that do my work. I mean, the Red Mars trilogy is still really, really important, I think, in the minds of a lot of us researchers, and I like to think about those books quite often in the work that we do as well. So, yeah.
Do researchers tend to read some of the science fiction?
Yeah, they do. They do. Unfortunately, they like hard science fiction. I mean, the Free Body Problem, things like that were very popular, and Neil Stephenson, things like Seven Eves, very popular. In Germany, that's very popular. It's got a different title. I think it's called Almathea or something in Germany. But that was a very popular book over here. A lot of people have read it.
I read it. It's a great book.
Yeah, it's a great book. I love it too. And there's a book called The Schwarm, which is a German science fiction book, came out about 15 years ago. And it's about these worms that eat methane. You know, we have these methane deposits around the world, and they stabilize areas like the Bermuda Triangle. One of the ideas about the Bermuda Triangle is there's methane outgassing that causes planes or ships to sink. Anyway, they have the idea that these methane worms eating the methane in Europe cause all these big floods. And what they did, when the writer did, he actually put the real scientists' names in this book. So that's been quite interesting. So the real people from the real institutes are named in these books. So that was quite popular in Germany because it's German researchers actually named. But this ship is in the book. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, so Germany, they're quite interested in science fiction, but usually the harder stuff. Or really fantasy. It's really the case. They were very interested in the Russian stuff when Germany was separated into East and West Germany. There was a huge interest in that, and virtually all of the Russian stuff that we haven't got in English still, despite people like Theodore Sturgeon promoting it in the past, we didn't get it translated into English, but they have all of the Strugatskys in German, for example, and lots of authors that even me and you that know a lot about science fiction probably wouldn't recognize at all. There's a museum or a library of this in where is it? Vienna. In Vienna, they have this German library of German science fiction, even though it's in Vienna. And you go in there and you see a colossal amount of stuff from the East that we've never had our hands on in the West. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah. More to explore.
Yeah.
If any editors listening from a publishing company, hey, here we go.
Yeah. So I mean, sorry, carry on.
Well, I was just going to say, so do you have any future projects that you have with Gollancz or any other publishers at this moment?
Well, at the moment, I'm doing for these travel posters that are on my website. I'm going to do the next set of 20 posters is going to be female authors. I mean, a lot of people come to me at conventions and say, "Well, you've done these 40 posters, but only 5 of them are by women." And I say, "Well, in the past, only 5 out of 40 books probably were by women." I mean, but I think they got a good point. So I'm doing a lot of illustrations, James Tiptree Jr. And this Gertrude Barrows Burnett, I don't know if you can see that here. This is a new Penguin edition of this weird fiction book. And it's actually about a ship which brings back something from the abyss that it shouldn't have brought back. So I really love her books. She wrote one called Citadel of Fear, which I love, which is sort of 1920s. It's a bit like Lovecraft, but a lot more running about and shooting and punching than there is in Lovecraft, but it's still dark beasts. And I really love that too. So I've done some illustrations from those for my posters, and I'll probably launch those at one of the next World Cons or Euro Cons in the next few years. And otherwise, I just constantly draw, but I'm not very good at selling myself. I just wait for someone to contact me and ask if I can do something for them, like Gollancz did. I mean, I did a few books for them. I did Something Wicked This Way Comes, and for the Fantasy Masterworks. Yeah. And then it sort of built from there. They ask me every so often to do stuff, and I say to them, "I want to do this illustrated Star Maker," and they say, "No one wants to buy that. Go away," and I do it anyway.
Well, and then that's going to be a whole book, isn't it?
Yeah, that will be a huge thing, and it's a huge thing, and but I love that book too. I think that's a fantastic book. I think Olaf Stapledon was almost like Newton. He was really gifted. I mean, that book is amazing, and I think Odd John, I don't know if you know it, Odd John. I mean, that's by far the first superhero book, and it's so much better. The problems of the superhero, and there's a ghastly child that has telepathic powers in that one. It's like that he contacts by mind, and even though it's this child that's physically very not well, it just grabs him, and I think that's a fantastically written book, Odd John, much forgotten, but Yeah. So these are the things I like to do. I also like this book. It's published better in America, New York Review of Books, Fancies and Goodnights by John Collier, who wrote some of the Twilight Zone episodes, for example, and short stories by him. I quite often bring that book and I toy with doing a set of illustrations based on those. They're strange books. Some are science fiction, some are weird. Like in one book, I particularly like the idea of people live in a department store after everyone else goes home. They're living amongst all the models. I love that idea. And then it's about when you're going to hell, maybe you can trick someone else to go down the escalator with the devil's assistance. That's a good one in there. So
Definitely sound like Twilight Zone stories.
Yeah, exactly. And probably my favorite for illustration ideas is J.G. Ballard, and I love the J.G. Ballard short stories and novels, and I think I've done 5 or 6 locations from the J.G. Ballard books in my travel series posters. I mean, I love his way of looking at contemporary life and making it looking at the potential pitfalls in it. I really enjoy that aspect of science fiction. Yeah.
This is amazing. I just love hearing the illustrator of books, the illustrator of these posters, with such a deep love and understanding in science fiction.
Yeah, it's
I feel like
my
it's
love.
missing sometimes when I look at modern covers, and that's why your work just stands out.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm doing it for the love of it. I mean, my job is great too, so I don't need to do the posters. I do it because I love it, and I do it because I can't help but do it. I think so. I mean, I love the idea that they try to do something different, as they are now with Penguin books, doing covers that are more appealing to the modern audience. I mean, it can't all be ray guns and spaceships and chainmail bikinis. I mean, that's for some editions, yes, but for some editions, no. I mean, behind you, I see you've got the John Wyndham web, and these old John Wyndham books were much more well suited. And when Brian Aldiss was in charge of the Penguin science fiction stuff, we had Max Ernst covers for science fiction books. We had proper artists and surrealists and stuff. And it's a shame that that's completely gone. I mean, I think like much, Star Wars is may have been the cause for some of the damage and the decline in the covers. I mean. Apart from the fact now that people are also reading much on their Kindles, so there's less money to pay for professional illustrators. I mean, personally, I'm not worried about this AI development. I think it's mediocre, the stuff that comes out. But even before the AI was invented, we have a lot of companies doing stock illustrations on their covers. I mean, I know that the guy that did this Star Maker cover, when he sold it, I don't think he got more than a few €1,000 for the original art there. You don't get much money for the original art even, and it's like it's a shame, really. I think if they use a student or something like that, they can get a good set of 3 or 4 illustrations out, and then maybe the student's got a great idea, but you don't often see them coming back again. It's like not like it was before, where we had Virgil Finlay or someone doing a lot of illustrations. We don't have so much of that, I think, anymore, which is a shame. So. Yeah.
And you know what, behind me here, the ones way up there, those were Peter Lord, the ones that he did for Penguin. Those were my favorite ones, because those are the ones that I started to read and really fell in love with Wyndham. And I remember also just in the start of this channel, Leo and Diane Dillon, which did just a ton of covers for the A Science Fiction Special Series 1, and Gene Safran with covers for Robert A. Heinlein, and there's a lot of ones that drew accurately to the book, but there's also a lot of just artists, like Richard Powers was such a surreal artist in some way.
Richard Powers was fantastic, absolutely one of my favorite. That's a great example of the sort of covers that would attract me. I mean, it's good that there was a range of different types. But I find that the AI and the stock art are too. So
they're really boring.
They're really boring, and it's a real shame, I think so. I mean, I like some of the bolder ones that we're getting in the UK, at least. I'm not sure what you're getting in the latest ones, but I know that the people from Tor are interested. I mean, I remember I do sci-fi conventions, and they are going around and they are looking at things, and so I think hopefully it's on the increase. I mean, we hear that printed books are going up in sales again since COVID, right? We was on the big decline, and now it's going up again. So I can't get my head around reading fiction on the Kindle personally. I just cannot do it. I mean, for my textbooks that I need for my work, I'll bring my Kindle, but I've got all these now. If I'm relaxing, I want to have this to read and relax with. I just can't relax with the Kindle so much. Yeah.
I agree. I tried it. I thought, oh, this is great. But then, no. Once I retired and I started doing this hobby of gathering these books and reading them, and it had to be physical books. I wasn't going to read them online unless I couldn't find a physical book.
Exactly. I mean, for some things this may be good, but the smell of them, everything about them is. I mean, I find old bus tickets when I buy them or something like that, and I think, oh, I went to the Holloway Road in 1996 to buy this book, and I haven't read it since. I mean, it's like I like that, and it's a physical thing, and you can give it away, of course. I try not to hoard it. I am a hoarder. I'm 50 years old. I've got 30 boxes in my parents' house in a different country. It's embarrassing, but I want to try and get away from it. There's a guy that John Peel, a record collector, DJ, and he had 100 records that he would not be without. I think maybe I'll do the same with books, but maybe 250 or something like that. Because my work is so traveling around, I'm not really rigid in one place. I could imagine getting it down to 250 that I couldn't do without, I guess. So, but, yeah.
Sounds like that would be a very interesting list.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to have a look at the ice?
Sure.
So there's a blue sky over there in the distance. Yeah, we're heading out of the ice now. So right now we're heading towards the Antarctic Peninsula to Elephant Island, and we're going to put a monitoring thing there to listen for the tourist boats that are coming in to see if there's more than there's supposed to be there and things like that. So we're going to put a listening station down there, and maybe we're going to do a dive at with our underwater camera there as well, at maybe 300 or 400 meters deep, and then we come back here next time, 4 years' time, and we can see how things are changing. So that's an interesting job, I think. But yeah,
you have an amazing job there. And I was going to mention, when you looked out there, I was thinking, Left Hand of Darkness. You could definitely have a winter scene from Antarctica there for the travel across the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also another book from when I grew up with Alan Dean Foster. I mean, I know he's not particularly loved by many, but I did love those ice books that he did, and that reminds me of that too. So it's funny, and I mean, I've got a video here. This is a particularly good and science fiction relevant location. So. I don't know how well you know the Stanislav Lem books, but there's one where he goes to this sort of mushroomy planet where there's these weird life forms and you can't understand what's going on. This looks exactly like that to me. It's like we found on the volcanoes of the Arctic on a area where the plates are moving apart, an ultra slow spreading ridge. It moves just a couple of centimeters a year, but it's volcanic, and it builds up these seamounts. They're still 600 meters underwater, but they're 3 kilometers high. We found the tops of these seamounts are completely covered by these giant crawling sponges. So they are 50 centimeters in size, and they leave these trails of spikes behind them from where they've moved. But they must move a few centimeters a year, maybe at their fastest, because they sort of grow to move. And it's probably hundreds of years. So if they forget their car keys, they've got to go back for 100 years to get the car keys and come back. So, and that's the video I'm uploading to you. But there's nothing more alien than this. So when I saw it, I mean, it's just like what you get. You think you can understand what's going on, but you really don't know what's going on with this. There's big things that are obviously alive, but how they function. Also, it's under permanent ice cover, but yet they're so big. It must be that they can just eat the tiny bits of algae that grow underneath the ice and fall, but they must get very low amounts of food. And we dated some of them. They're 900 years old, so it's really an alien environment. And that's what I always find. I always find these strange new alien environments, which is fantastic for a science fiction fan.
Yeah. The longevity, that's amazing. It's like trees, some of the trees that you can find.
Yeah. I mean, some people say that some of these things are basically functionally immortal. I mean, you can chop them to pieces, and bits of them will keep growing. So it's really a strange thing. But life will always find a way. I mean, you can say all these things. I mean, it's like it really is true. There's truth in even things like Jurassic Park. I mean, every environment I go to, there's a lot of life. It's really interesting. That is, yeah. And I bet it's the same in space. I think that we'll end up finding life pretty much everywhere of some description. I don't think it's just here I guess you don't either. I guess most science fiction fans don't.
It's hard to imagine that it's only one place in a universe so large.
No. Yeah. One of a strange thing about where we are now is that, I mean, you know, 60 degrees south, we've got this band of water that goes right around the planet, and the water basically is the screaming 60s, roaring 40s, furious 50s, this area. The storms constantly go around. And what this is basically doing is keeping the two bits of the world ocean separate, the little bit in Antarctica and everywhere else. And some things, like crabs, are not in Antarctica. There's no crabs in Antarctica. They never get across there. And then also in Antarctica, these fish that are making the nests I told you about, there's another thing about them is they do not have hemoglobin in their blood. They use copper or even nothing in their blood for oxygen transport. And we're just studying on this ship how that works. And that's only in Antarctica. So some things grow the same and similar, and some things grow completely different when they're separated. I guess it's like Australia, where we have the marsupials and nowhere else, and like it's the same under the water. Even though the oceans are connected, nothing gets past this zone of this type. No crabs. That's amazing that there's just no crabs down here. Yeah.
I didn't know there was a zone that separated the oceans from Antarctica.
Yeah, so it's like
another planet. Then really, I can see why there's so much research there.
Yeah, it's really separated off. It's really the storms on Earth just keep going around. Like Jupiter's the lines on Jupiter. There's an area where there's no land all the way around the Earth, and the creatures on the seafloor above and below are different, which is pretty interesting, I think.
Definitely. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us here on Vintage SF. This has been just fascinating to hear about both of your jobs. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on here. So, yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot.
All right. All the best to you. Safe travels.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Cheers. I want to thank again Autun Purser for joining us here on Vintage SF, and we may see him again. I'm going to be reading Odd John, and I will also read Star Maker. These books by Olaf Stapledon were two of his favorites, so I would love to talk about these books with him in the future. In the description to this video, there is a link to his illustration website. Here you can find that Travelers series he was talking about. Fantastic travel destinations. I'll also have a link to Polarstern's Journeys. Here you can track the ship itself and see some posts about what they're doing. So until next time, keep curious and keep reading.